The conservators from the Midwest Art Conservation Center are here to conduct what's called a conservation survey of our works on paper collection. This will help us to identify conservation and preservation priorities within the collection so that we can ensure that the works are available for exhibition, research, and study. The museum, since its opening in 1970, has acquired over 7,000 works of art. Of that collection, 1,800 constitute works on paper. One of the things that the conservators are doing is helping us to identify what needs to be taken care of so that the works on paper are available for future generations.
We are surveying, that is, we are examining approximately 800 works of art in the Works on Paper collection, South Dakota Art Museum. The 800 pieces are a representative sampling of the entire paper collection. For each work that we examine, we fill out a survey sheet. Basically, we document the type of paper the work is on, the medium, that is, what are the materials used to create the design, and then most importantly, we identify the condition of the object. Does it have tears? Are there pressure-sensitive tapes on it? Are there losses or holes? Is it discolored from contact with acidic materials? Has the ink or other medium faded? And after we've documented specific conditions, we assign a priority to that object in terms of its need for attention from a conservator. And what this does is it allows the institution to develop a logical plan for treating the needs of the individual objects. In addition to examining for condition, we also identify housing. That is, what kind of mat board is the work secured into, if any at all? Does it require extra support because of size or weight, for example? The process is we are given objects item by item. We look at the object, we have our sheet, and we note all of the condition issues that we see on the object on the sheet. At the end of the survey, there will be approximately 800 sheets. And in addition to examining the individual objects, we also, address questions put to us about kind of more general aspects of care.
We are very fortunate to receive funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services under their Museums for America grant program. The total project is costing us $106,000, of which we received $53,000 and some change from the granting agency. One of the benefits of the survey is that we will be able to address specific issues related to specific works of art.
These are two works by the artist named Paul Goebel, whose archives is here at South Dakota Art Museum. These are wonderful illustrations and really beautiful. It was a real treat to be able to look at 50 of these pieces. These works in many ways are in very good condition overall. However, there are some condition issues that are specific to the materials and techniques that Goebel used. For example, in this piece here, you'll notice that there are pieces of what we call bark paper attached to the paper support which create part of the image. This is paper made to simulate bark because Goebel is using it to depict a fallen tree. These elements are separate from what we call the paper support, as I said, and they have been attached with probably a rubber cement type adhesive. The adhesive fails and doesn't work anymore, and as a result of that, the element detaches. And you can see in this case, this piece has come free and it's left behind it a very discolored adhesive film, and there is the same on the reverse of this, although it's less visible. So obviously this is a higher priority item because we don't want to lose this significant element that's very much part of the design. So what we would do to take care of this condition problem is we would first clean the residues from the paper and then reduce them on the back of the bark paper element and then reattach using a more secure museum quality adhesive. This other work here, in it you can see in this beautiful big red sun, that there are areas where there are kind of jagged areas of what we call loss. What's happening there is that the ink has not bonded well to the underlying paper and is flaking away from that paper. What it's leaving behind is a stain, kind of a lighter colored red stain that has been absorbed into the paper, but the brilliant dark red ink actually sits on the paper. So every time the paper is handled, or even in response to changes in temperature and relative humidity, that ink is destabilized and it will crack and come away from the paper support. The next step for the South Dakota Art Museum will be to begin planning for matting the works, that is putting them into good quality, museum quality housings, those that are not yet matted. The next step will include establishing a plan for providing conservation treatment to objects, beginning with those that have the highest priority assignments.
After we are done with the survey, then we take each of the individual recommendations that the conservators have provided for us, and we will start implementing those recommendations. In some cases, we have to provide a rigid support underneath them, and so it's a matter of inserting a rigid support. In some cases, there are works that need conservation treatment. And so what we'll have to do is seek funding to implement those, that conservation treatment. This particular grant allows us to provide internships to 2 students for 2 years. So we have 2 interns working on this project.
I have a year left here at South Dakota State, and afterwards I'd like to go into possibly museum studies. And so what I'm learning with the whole conservation project is just picking up this information and again soaking it up like a sponge, so that hopefully if I'm introduced to situations like this in the future, I'll be able to kind of come up with the, remember this information. And it also is opening my eyes a little bit to different fields in museum studies, not only just the going through the conditioning reports, which is what I've been doing, but then the conservation aspect of it, and it kind of just is rounding out the entire field a little bit more.
Before the conservators arrived, our one intern, Samantha, and I spent 3 months unframing all of the works. The works had previously been stored in frames, and so we had to remove them from the frames and then release them from their hinges.
I've worked exclusively with the Cockerline collection, which is a collection of prints, and so I haven't really gotten an opportunity to see what else is in the collections here at the museum, and so being able to go through these works on paper has introduced me to all the different artists that are also represented here. And just going through, it's so impressive, and the situation of being able to be there with a work of art right there in front of you as opposed to behind glass or having to stand, a foot or 2 away. It's just such a different experience. It's so surreal.
We've also digitized the entire collection, and so we now have high-resolution images of all the works.
One big thing that I've really walked away with is when an artist creates something and he or she puts it in a frame or puts it in some way to display it, that's not the end. Artwork, as cheesy as it is to say, is almost like a child. It's created and then you have to nurture it and you have to grow with it, because a piece of artwork is not just, it's not done. It's constantly, like paper expands. That's a big thing that we're learning. And so as cheesy as it is to say, I'm really glad that I get to be a part of, the upbringing of these works of art.
When the survey is completed, then both interns will be on staff, and those interns will be working with me to implement the initial recommendations made by the conservators. We've also had a number of volunteers. Some members of our museum guild have helped with the project. They specifically helped gather information about the works by Paul Goebel.
You really get to study the pictures, and particularly with this project, they were not under glass or under any coverings. So you really had a great opportunity to examine the colors and the details that sometimes you just miss when they're under glass and you can't peer at them, literally stare at them. It was a great opportunity to see the detail.
The affection for each piece that was brought out for the conservators to look at was that was amazing to see. They genuinely cared about each thing that was brought out on paper, and it's obvious that the South Dakota Art Museum cares for each of those works on paper too. So I think the people of South Dakota can rest assured that we have a great museum here that is going to preserve those things into the future.
This project is part of a long-term process that this museum started back in 2000. We have been very proactive in what's called preventative preservation. Rather than reacting to something taking place at the time, we are proactive in trying to prevent things from happening. And so this project is another example or demonstration of our efforts to be proactive in our preservation activities.
It's been a large pleasure actually to work here because this institution demonstrates such a high standard of collections care. And the very fact that we're here doing this survey is an indication of that.